Good morning, and thank you for joining me for today's midweek reflection. This last weekend was the 50th anniversary of the events in the city of Derry in Northern Ireland, which have since come to be known as Bloody Sunday. 26 unarmed civilian Catholics, many of whom were on a civil rights march, were shot by British Army soldiers, members of the Parachute Regiment. 14 of those people subsequently died of their injuries, and it's widely looked at now as a key, a decisive moment in modern Irish history. It was a point at which the events of what we call the Troubles took a deep turn for the worse. Many people in the nationalist community were radicalised by Bloody Sunday. Some indeed then came to align themselves with the Provisional IRA. The other situation globally which has been on my mind, and has been for many of us, I dare say, in recent weeks, has been the huge build-up of vast numbers of Russian troops around the borders of Ukraine. And there is at least the possibility, although we don't know how much of a possibility, that we could be on the verge of a major war on the continent of Europe for the first time in most of our lives, and certainly for the first time since 1945. And I suppose the truth which draws together these two different situations is the reality that we cannot take peace for granted. Most of us have been in the very fortunate position to assume for all of our lives that peace is a given. But peace has to be worked at, and maybe it has to be worked at again and again and again. It's very hard to see your neighbour as your enemy if you know them and if you know their story. Of course, one of the realities of Northern Ireland over the decades has been that you have two communities who live close to each other, who live very near to each other, but who also live very, very separate lives. They go to different schools, they often, in the past, have worked in different places, and of course, they've worshipped in different churches. Somewhere else where I had a limited experience of that in a different kind of way was on a visit to Israel and the Palestinian territories some years ago. I stayed for a time with a Palestinian family in Bethlehem, and I witnessed just how much of a struggle life was for them day to day living under the occupation. But something that also struck me was just how little Israelis and Palestinians met one another. Israelis had very, very little knowledge, very little understanding at all of what life was like under the occupation. And most Palestinians would rarely meet an Israeli unless it was an Israeli soldier. But there's lots of evidence that when you bring together Israeli and Palestinian children and young people, their lives are very, very similar. They have the same kinds of hopes, the same joys, the same passions, and the same sorts of anxieties. And the same is absolutely true when you bring together children and young people from Catholic and Protestant communities in Northern Ireland as well. We are one humanity, but we only really seem to grasp, we only understand that we want humanity when we are able to sit alongside others, when we can hear their stories. I think the other thing to be said about peace is simply that we can't offer peace, we can't bring peace to anyone unless we have peace, unless we are at peace with ourselves and with our God. My granny used to have a rather nice expression. If you were feeling very, very anxious, she would simply say, sit down and take peace to yourself. So I think what I want to say on this 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday is, who do we perceive to be the other, the stranger? And can we think of a way, and whether that might be people who live near to us, perhaps it might be migrants, foreigners, refugees, can we think of a way to reach out to them? Can we find a way to share ours and their stories? Because if we can, I think we'll find we have very, very little to fear and so much to learn and to gain. I'd like to read to you the poem The Lake Isle of Innisfree by William Butler Yeats. And this is, in a way, a rather idealised picture of a peaceful place. But I've chosen it for one little line in the poem which resonates to me. And it's where Yeats says to us, peace comes dropping slow. And then we'll finish with the hymn, will you come and follow me if I but call your name? And I think it's a really lovely hymn about the cost, about the costliness to ourselves of genuine, peaceful, Christ-like living, but also about its rich rewards. The Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings, their midnights all a glimmer and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavements grey, I hear it in the deep heart's core.